Hello and welcome to Cool Coffee with Kansas Principals. By and for school administrators, this podcast is intended to promote candid discussion and insight about our great profession. My name is Rick Sola, and as Communications Director for the Kansas Principals Association, I am the host, but I am certainly not the feature. Sit back, take a sip, and enjoy. This is Cool Coffee with Kansas Principals. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to another edition of Cool Coffee with Kansas Principals. Today, I am here with the Superintendent of USD 204, Bonner Springs-Edwardsville, Mr. Rick Moulin. Welcome to the show, Rick.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you here. And I actually had one of your colleagues in the spring, Dr. Stephen Archer, was on the show talking a little bit of PBIS back spring of 25. So good to have Bonner Springs back here again. And I could start with you like I did with him and ask if you have any insight on whether the Chiefs are going to end up in your backyard out there.
I wish I knew the answer to that, but I think a great name for the Chiefs would be the Bonner Springs Chiefs. We would take them here in Bonner Springs for sure. But I don't know that the Chiefs will make it over to the Kansas side. But you know, whether they stay at Arrowhead or come over to Kansas, I'm a big fan. So I'll continue to be a fan.
Yeah, I thought for sure we'd have an answer by now. So when I talked to Stephen about it, I thought it was coming up, but we'll find out soon enough as long as I stay in the area. But hey, appreciate you being on here. So we're recording this. It's July 22nd. So, you know, kind of a busy time of year for all of us in education. I can imagine as superintendent, there's a lot that you've been working on all summer. But I always like to start with just a kind of a basic road to the chair that you're currently sitting in and your road in education. And so I'll turn it over and have you fill us in from day one in education to where you are today.
Well, yeah, thank you for asking. This is actually my 30th year in Bonner Springs-Edwardsville School District. I'm getting ready to start my second year as superintendent. So I started off in 1996, 1997. I was a high school English teacher. And I did that for a while, and then I became a high school guidance counselor. And then after I was a guidance counselor, I became the high school assistant principal at Bonner Springs. I was the middle school principal in Bonner Springs for a few years, and then I became the high school principal. Did that for about 5 years, and then became the assistant superintendent. And then this last year, I became superintendent. The other unique piece of this is I'm also a Bonner Springs High School graduate. And so I graduated from Bonner Springs High School in 1990, and there's no place I'd rather be than right here in the Bonner Springs-Edwardsville School District. It's the reason that I'm in the situation I'm in today is because I had great teachers growing up, a great school system, and being the first kid in my family to ever go to college and graduate from college. I owe everything to the teachers and the staff of USD 204.
That's awesome. First of all, what a compliment back to the district that was such an important part of your life and upbringing. But I bet that's really neat for the community to know that their superintendent is a product of their own system.
Yeah, it's sometimes there's a lot of pressure because you know nobody wants to fail, but nobody wants to fail in their own hometown either. So there is some pressure with being a hometown superintendent, but there's a lot of pride. And like I said, we've got phenomenal kids in our district, outstanding teachers and support staff. And so I'm just lucky to be surrounded by such great people and to get to do this job. So very thankful to be in Bonner Springs-Edwardsville.
So you went from a middle school principal to a high school principal. If you had to go back to one of those only, and maybe taking the school out of it, but the levels, where did you find the most enjoyment or kind of your insight on both middle and high school? Because they're kind of two different beasts, but they're very similar in some ways as well.
Yeah, so when I became the middle school principal, my entire career, other than when I student taught, was high school. And so I learned a lot being a middle school principal. And one of the things that I think was very eye-opening for me is I remember when I was a high school assistant principal and teacher, and I'm sure it's the same in every district, but there would be times where teachers would think, well, you know what, they're not teaching kids how to write in middle school. And so I remember when I became the middle school principal, I'm like, we're going to make sure we're writing. Kids are learning how to write. And I get down to middle school, and kids are writing all the time. And I remember sitting in a PLC one day, and one of the teachers said, well, I don't think in elementary they're doing X, Y, or Z. And I said, hey, hold on 1 second. Do you know, when I was at the high school, they used to think that we didn't teach kids how to write. But now that I'm here, I see kids writing all the time. And not only that, but we've got great teachers. And so we can't assume that we're not doing certain things at the elementary school, because chances are at the high school, there's probably college professors that are sitting around saying, well, in high school, if they just teach them this. But the bottom line is, I think it's a very rewarding job. Middle school is awesome because the age of the student, they're learning who they are. But I really loved also being the high school principal, because at that point kids are starting to make plans for what's next in life, and it was just an honor to be part of that and to help guide kids and help develop programs to where kids could actually explore different career opportunities and things of that nature. So to answer your question, I don't know. I love them both. I mean,
Yeah.
I love middle school and I love high school. So
Yeah. I have only been a middle school administrator, but I taught freshmen when I was teaching, and loved them both, and I can see the rewards on both sides. It is funny you mentioned the next level always kind of looks down upon, well, they're not getting this done at whatever level, and then you're right, it probably carries on up to college. Well, those schools aren't really getting them ready for like, oh, we're working on it. And I always say we're planting a lot of seeds, and they come to fruition at some point. It just takes some time sometimes. So
you know one thing I do at home? I pretend like I'm not very good at making the bed because I hate making the bed, right? And guess what? My wife does. My wife ends up making the bed because she doesn't think I can do it. Kids are the same way. And so when kids get into a classroom, they're going to try to get away is not the right word, but they're going to do what they can to maybe get out of doing something they don't want to do. Kids may not want to write, right? But it doesn't mean they don't know how. It just means that we have to put the procedures in place. We have to put the expectations in, and we just have to make them do it. So.
Yeah, and they're not always wanting to be there. So that a lot of times they just do what they need to do to keep either parents off their back or teachers off, whatever, and just kind of like, I'll just kind of get by. And then, and that's what's neat. When I was at the high school, it's neat to see when they start to kind of form a direction of where they want to go, and that passion starts to ignite, and then you see them thrive. So you were a teacher for many years and then got into administration. Did you always know you wanted to go into administration?
No, I never wanted any part of being an administrator until I decided I wanted to. So I remember being a teacher and trying to think about what was next. And I actually started taking classes because I wanted to start working towards my master's. And after I took my first administration class, I decided this isn't for me. I don't want to do this. And so I reflected, and I actually became a counselor instead. So I got my master's degree in counseling. And at that time, as a classroom teacher, I had kids that would talk to me about, personal issues they were having all the time. And it felt good to listen and to help guide kids and things like that. And so I thought, I don't want to be a principal. I don't want to be an assistant principal. I want to be a counselor. So I did that for several years. And as I was doing that job, once again, I did some self-reflection and thought, I really want to make even more of an impact, and how can I do that? And so I decided maybe I could be an assistant principal, but never really thought about being the lead principal until I became the assistant principal. And after I did the assistant principal role for a couple of years, I thought, maybe I do want to be the principal, and because I could have even more influence on kids and the trajectory of kids' lives and things of that nature. And so it just kind of it honestly just happened over time. So
Yeah, that's actually kind of a good analogy to what we were just talking about as far as kids kind of kind of get along, but then when they discover something, just like you did, you discovered, hey, maybe I do want to do this. And, if someone was trying to teach you to be a principal way before you were ready, you may have just kind of gone through the motions, okay, check some boxes, but then it kind of clicked for you. And then, so now you're in the superintendent chair, you're going into year 2. Is there anything that, hopefully we have lots of principals listening, but there's a lot of principals that are aspiring to take that next step. As you go into year 2 now as a superintendent, is there anything that you look back on like, not going to do that again, or I want to make sure I do this again, or any reflection on that?
Yeah, there's, I think part of being successful in any role in a school district is you have to always reflect. And it took me a while to figure that out. I always tell kids and teachers and anybody who will listen that you want to make new mistakes, because if you're making the same mistakes over and over, you're not learning and you're not growing. Early on in my career, I remember, for example, we'd have a freshman orientation when I was a high school assistant principal, and the next year we'd have another freshman orientation, and there were times where the same types of things would happen that would cause a little frustration or didn't go as smoothly as I thought. But if you wait a whole year to think about it, you forget. And so early on in my career, I learned that I keep a calendar, and on that calendar, as we go through certain events or certain situations, I make a note on the changes we're going to make for the following year. Usually it's something simple, but I'm not going to remember it a year later, so it's important to reflect. And so in this role, it's the same thing. We're not perfect. I'm not perfect, and nobody is. But the goal is to try to do the best job I can, and to be as supportive of I can of our kids and our teachers. And if I do make mistakes, I hope that they're new mistakes, because I'm learning. So
yeah, gosh, I wrote that down. I really like that quote. Make new mistakes. It's it's simple, but there's a lot to kind of grab hold of there. And I feel so similar in that I get most frustrated with myself if I make a mistake for the second time. Like, you knew better than that. Come on, And but to make new mistakes also implies effort and growth, and that's how we grow through those mistakes. I really like that, and a great strategy as far as a calendar goes, keeping just a calendar, because we're a profession of kind of annual events.
yeah.
We're in registration right now. We'll get to back to school night. We're going to have, it just kind of cycles. So, no, that's fantastic. One thing as I kind of think back on, I don't know if you felt the same way, but as you go from being a teacher to this day, my biggest challenge of transition was from teaching to the assistant principalship. I felt like it was a new career, and one thing that really was a struggle early on was I felt like, oh my gosh, the relationships and connections I have with kids as a teacher, I can't match that as assistant principal. Then you discover, well, it looks different, and there's new ways to do that. As you've gone from the AP to the principal, now to superintendent, what does it look like as superintendent to stay connected with kids from this chair?
Well, I think it's the same advice that I give our principals, is that for me to be successful, for our principals to be successful, we have to be where the kids are. And so I remember, going back to your question, I'm going to backtrack for a little bit here. I remember being an assistant principal and having the same feeling that you just described. And being an assistant principal is a hard job, because number one, a lot of times you're dealing with behaviors. Number two, you want to support the teachers. And number three, you're dealing with angry parents, or sometimes parents that are upset. But I think the moment that everything shifted for me is I remember working with a kid, and the kid was in trouble for some reason. And the old me at the time, in my mind, would be thinking about the consequence right out of the gate. And so as the kids tell me what happened, I was thinking about, okay, the consequence of this kid's going to get ISS or detention or whatever the case may be. But one day it just clicked. And as the kid was talking to me, I stopped thinking about the consequence, and I listened and I reflected. And then as I was talking to the kid, I said something along the lines of, hey, you're going to be in a similar situation down the road. How are you going to handle this differently? Let's think about it now while you're not mad. Because when you are mad, you're just going to react the same way. So let's think about it. And the kid still got the same consequence. And I just remember at that point, the conversation with the parent went much smoother. The kid liked and respected me because I took time to listen and help him reflect. And then when I called that parent, it was, hey, we've got a plan for how he's going to handle this situation in the future. This is what he says he's going to do if he gets in a similar situation down the road, and we're going to help him do that. And you know, behavior oftentimes is a form of communication. And once we take notice of that, we can actually figure out what's going on in this situation and how can we help the student learn from it and grow from it, because a consequence is a consequence, and students need consequences for behavior, but they also have to learn and grow from it. And so that was a big step for me once I figured that out. And now in this role as superintendent, like I said, I want to be where the kids are. So I visit our elementary schools quite a bit. And that was very eye-opening for me because I'd always been a high school principal and middle school principal. I love our elementary schools. I go into the elementary school and the kids are so excited to see you. I've done some guest teaching for some different lessons. I've read to classes from time to time. But really, I try to just interact with kids in the lunchrooms when I go to the schools and just touch base. I'm a guest speaker in some of our secondary classes, different things of that nature. I just, you can never lose sight of the reason we're all here. We're here because our kids need us, and they need us to be the best we can be every day. And you don't know what's going on in your district if you're not where the kids are. It's hard for you to make decisions and that impact kids if you're not around the kids. So I just make it a priority to visit schools and classrooms weekly. So
yeah, that's great. So being a product of Bonner Springs, as you go around the buildings, do you ever get students come up and say, "Hey, my parents went to school with you," or whatever, anything like that? Any connections?
Oh yeah, I've got it makes me feel old because I've got students who, I had their parents, and they'll tell me about it, and they'll share stories about when their parents were in school, and and I don't know if you have the same experience, but there will be times where I'll see a former student somewhere, whether it's the grocery store or Walmart, whatever it is, and a lot of times the former student will say, "Hey, remember that time I got in trouble?" And honestly, I don't remember. I mean, I do not remember most situations of kids getting in trouble. What I do remember are the relationships. I remember, the qualities of the student that I enjoyed. And so the things that stick with kids, we just have to understand that we make a huge impact on kids, even when we don't realize it. So I see kids all the time, and I see the kids' parents, and there'll be a time where I'll be in a classroom and the kid will say, "Hey, my mom said that she had you as an English teacher," and I'll say something if it's appropriate at the time. I'll say, "Hey, let's do a quick picture. You can share. I'll put it on. We'll share it with your mom or whatever." And so we'll do a picture and different things like that.
Yeah.
Funny thing is, I was in the lunchroom one day with a bunch of kindergartners, and this little kindergarten girl. When I came into her classroom like the week before, and the teacher introduced me, and the little girl, and she says, "Does anybody know who this is?" And this little girl raises her hand and said, "He's friends with my grandma." And I go, "I am friends with your grandma." And so anyways, we were in the lunchroom, and I said, "Hey, let's take a picture, and we'll share it with your grandma." And she's like, "Okay." So we take a picture, and the kid next to her, "Can you take a picture with me for my grandma?" "Sure." And so the next thing you know, I took like 10 or 12 pictures of kids because they wanted it for their grandma. And of course, I don't know their grandmas
Yeah.
to send it to them, but I took the pictures anyway. It was kind of fun.
That's awesome. I got to imagine going to elementary school just kind of reassuring and just kind of feel good, and go in there and they give hugs, and I very rarely do I need to go to an elementary. Every once in a while, and usually I'm working with fifth graders, but I filled in for a second grade teacher covering a class, and it was incredible. First of all, it's a hard job.
Hey, you're not kidding.
There's a lot going on in that second grade. I was only there for 45 minutes, and it felt like 3 hours. And I'm juggling plates, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But there's a magic in elementary schools, I think, that's just really, really neat.
It's so impressive to watch elementary teachers in action. And I made a joke with our kindergarten teacher one day. I would love teaching kindergarten for like 30 minutes because, man, they have so much structure and routines and all the things, and those aren't necessarily my strengths. But, man, we've got some amazing teachers.
Yeah. You kind of hit on this, but, and maybe you have some new principals, but like I said, hopefully there's a lot of principals listening to this, and we're at the start of a year. Especially those new principals, what advice would you give them as they're about to start, perhaps either in a new position or in administration for the first year? What advice would you give them coming from a superintendent?
I think for principals or administrators or even teachers, anybody in the profession to be successful, you have to be consistent. You have to be the same person every day. And so, Todd Whitaker, I don't know if you've read his book, but basically he talks about if you've had one bad day, you might as well have, bad days every day because people don't know what to expect. So you can't treat people nice 4 days out of 5. You gotta be the same person every day, and because people appreciate consistency. And so there are going to be some challenges that you face, and you're the person that everybody looks at to determine how they're going to react. I remember when I was the high school principal, there was a post on Facebook of a parent complaining that their kid only got 4 tater tots for lunch. And this picture's on and I didn't look at Facebook, but people would often bring stuff to me and say, hey, did you know this was going on? So I remember coming in the office one day, and my secretary comes up to me and says, hey, Rick, have you seen Facebook? And I said, no, what's going on? She said, look at this. And there's this picture of a lunch tray with 4 tater tots on it, and we're getting slammed for having 4 tater tots, or for not giving enough food at lunch and all this stuff. And I looked at our secretary and I said, Renee, we've worked too hard. We are not going down over tater tots. And she laughed and I laughed and we moved on. I did end up calling the kid in and say, hey, if you ever have an issue at lunch, you just need to let me know. And what's ironic is the kid said, that wasn't even my lunch. I don't know why my mom did that. And so we kind of had a little, but I did. I said, hey, if you got an issue, if you feel like you're having an issue at lunch, all you got to do is let somebody know. And anyway, but the secretary was going to react, and so was the office was going to react however I reacted. So if I got mad, they were going to be mad. But I made light of the situation, even though in my head I'm like, why would somebody do that? But, so you got to be the same person every day.
Yeah. I really like that. Do you find it a challenge sometime on the internal struggle? Because inside you're like, are you kidding me? Tater tots? This is, but on the outside you have to project, differently.
The times in my career where I've let my emotions take over, it just causes more work. Because then you have to backtrack and you have to do all the, and so you try not to take things personal, even though it's hard, and you try to be consistent, and you advocate for kids. We had a situation where we had a parent-teacher conferences one time, and one of the teachers came up to me and said, hey, this parent's here and they're not very happy. I said, okay. So I went into the cafeteria and she was sitting with the teacher, and I'm sitting at the table with the teacher, the student, and the parent. And the parent starts saying something like, keep in mind for the audience listening, my name is Rick Moulin, right? And this parent looks at the teacher and says, another thing, I cannot stand Mr. Moulin. And I'm like, she's talking about me to me and doesn't know it. And she's talking about how she doesn't like me because this, that, and the other. I listened, and I turned and looked at her son, and I said, hey, let's figure out how we can get on track. What are some things we can do to help? And after that, she looks at me and says, oh, my goodness, thank you so much. What's your name again? And I wanted so bad to make up a name, but I told her, hey, I'm Rick Moulin, and she was very embarrassed. Later on, the teacher joked that I was trying to kick her under the table, but my legs weren't long enough. And so, but once again, it's real easy to take things personal, but most of the time, it's the position that somebody's attacking and not the person. And so, if you can look in the mirror every night and know that you're doing the best you can for the kids in your school, then you should be able to sleep at night. And what you're doing is important.
Yeah, that's a funny situation to envision, having that conversation. I bet the student was just mortified, probably realizing what was going on, the teacher. But no, you're absolutely right, and there is that internal, and that's something that I've gotten better with as you just get into position of like things you got to kind of keep inside, or you have your team that you may share some things a little more candidly with. But yeah, there's a saying, a good principal friend of mine used to say, something to do with when the principal sneezes, everyone catches a cold, or something like that. And there's a lot of truth to that. So hey, we're about to start a new school year. What's got you really excited about 25-26?
Oh, I'm excited to see our kids continue to grow and develop. As I told you before, we've got such good teachers in USD 204, and the classroom teacher makes all the difference, because whether you like it or not, every kid only gets to be a first grader once, a second grader once, and we got to do the best we can to maximize kids' potential. Our former superintendent, Dan Brungart, used to say, they walk across the stage one at a time. And so we've worked really hard over the last several years to put kids in position to where they can be successful in whatever it is that's next in life. So some of our kids are going to go to college. We want to make sure that those kids are ready. If they're going to a technical school, are we providing the skills necessary for them to be successful? Job force, the military, whatever it is. Our job is to get kids ready for what's next. And we've really taken some great steps towards that. Another thing I'm really excited about is we have a team that's been working with the University of Kansas. We were one of the inaugural teams to start looking at AI through the University of Kansas. And so our teachers have started implementing a little bit of AI, and we're going to continue to grow that this year, led by a group of our teachers, and teaching kids the proper way to utilize artificial intelligence and how to be successful with that. There's so many things that I'm excited about. If I could, I'd like to give a plug.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We have I have a podcast that I just started this past year. It's called Brave Talk, or Talk 204, excuse me, Talk 204. And so you can catch that podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. We're going to have our first episode of the new season, I believe, come out next Friday. So we're excited about that as well. But I'm just excited to see our kids and our teachers. And, summer goes fast, but you also miss the people you work with every day because you don't see them for a little while. So.
Yeah, that's great. We're starting to have slowly some teachers come back in the building, and just what you said, it's really great to see everybody. You spend all year together, get to know people, and it's like a family. So I will link your show into the show notes here, the Talk 204, and that's really awesome. I actually clicked on a few and heard, and you had I think it was maybe your most recent one, but you had a senior on your show talking about some things, and that's a lot of fun. So have you enjoyed it? Kind of off topic real quick, but have you enjoyed doing the podcast?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. It was something that I kind of wanted to do, and then Jada Houston, who was the guest on the last podcast, it was kind of part of her senior project to help come up with the title of the show, the theme, and all those different things. She works with our communications coordinator. But it's fun to talk to students and staff members and community members about things that are happening in our district, and just to build those connections. And the school district's a big part of the community, and so we want to make sure that we're building good partnerships.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And what a cool thing for her to be a part of something that, that's continuing on beyond her years in Bonner. So real quick, you've done a lot of this, but 30 seconds, a quick brag out on just Bonner Springs-Edwardsville, everything. And really, you've done this whole show. It's just, there's so many really rich things going on in Bonner Springs, but a quick brag out to your people.
Hey, I tell you what, our kids, I'd put them up against kids anywhere. They work hard. They're respectful. We have our challenges just like everywhere else. But the nice thing about being in Bonner Springs-Edwardsville is our kids and our community respects teachers. They value education, and it's just great to be part of. The second thing I'll tell you, and I've said this a few times now, but literally, it's just magical walking into some of our classrooms in USD 204 to see our teachers in action and connecting with kids, and kids that may struggle, to see the light bulb go off. And it's because of the great work of our teachers and our support staff. And we've got a great team at our central office as well. And really, at the end of the day, I think we're headed in the right direction. Our focus as a district is all of us are here because kids need us. And so we don't hire people just to hire people. Our kids and our buildings need us. And if you're in a support role, you understand that support role is needed because it helps kids in the classroom. So I always use even like payroll as an example. If people aren't getting their paychecks, they're focused on that instead of teaching kids. And so we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help our teachers and our staff be successful, and it's just a great place to work and live.
Yeah. No, that's really awesome, really great perspective. And as busy as it is right now, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on here, and just so many different sound bites. I wrote several down to make new mistakes, but I really liked your behavior equals communication. We were talking about earlier, and then like you said, the focus on, if you're not getting your paycheck, that's where the focus is going to be. It's detracting from the classroom. And then of course, what's going to stick with me too is we're not going down on tater tots.
Yeah, that was a funny situation. And like I said, you have to be consistent, and you have to be the same person every day, because the people around you are watching, the kids are watching, and they're going to respond how the leader responds. And that same thing in the classroom. Kids are going to respond the way the classroom teacher responds. And so
no, 100%. Well, Rick, thank you again so much, and all the best to you. And as you start your second year out there as the head up in Bonner, and we'll look forward to a great school year ahead. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Check the notes section for more information on this episode and to learn more about the KPA and its mission to develop and support all principals through optimized learning, collaborative leadership, networking, and service. Be sure to check back in for our next episode and spread the word about cool coffee with Kansas principals. Catch you next time.